All right, we are live. What is going on, everybody? All right, this is a Ring Kings special event. Ring Kings top 25 all time list. This is gonna be interesting. This is gonna be interesting. We got some of our friends from the LBHT crew in here um, to help us compile this list. Now B's gonna explain what we did for this top 25 list, but I just want to throw a caveat out there before we start. All right, look, don't get emotional about this. All right, if you're a boxing purist,
Sure.
right? don't get
Why do I get
emotional.
blamed all of a sudden?
This is just for fun, right? Like this ain't for anybody on the panel. This is for the people that watch that are gonna leave the comments like, why'd you leave this person off? I can't believe so and so is on here or whatever. Like, just have fun with it. You know, it's all for fun. It's entertainment. So, B, we're gonna go ahead, explain it real quick, what it is that you did and how we came up with this top 25 list.
Yeah, so Suge had the idea. Thank you, Suge. You wanted to just have a conversation about our top 25 fighters of all time. Obviously, nobody's going to agree on the top 25. So what we did, we all submitted a top 25 list. And I just kind of, a simple points. What's up, Brandon?
What's up?
Brand new $10 patron, Brandon. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate you, Brandon.
But yeah, no, just a simple points list. You know, the number one person gets 25 points, the number 25 person on your list gets 1 point, and I just compiled all the lists, and the top 25 made it. Everybody else, gets cut. Didn't give any real criteria. This is just whatever each person thinks is, worthy of being the top 25. It could be that person's resume, could be their talent, could be their impact on the sport, their entertainment value, whatever each individual, kind of determines as a top 25, as being worthy of a top 25 spot is what we used. And like Jose said, it's boxing. It's very subjective. These are all our opinions. There are no wrong answers, no wrong opinions. Some of these opinions are very wrong, but there are no wrong opinions.
especially Brodny's. All of Brodny's opinions are completely
my
wrong.
list. My list is immaculate, but whatever.
This is not going to end well. I already know it.
It's not beginning too well, I think.
But it will be fun. It will be fun.
It's going to be fun.
So I guess we can just go ahead and jump right in. We're gonna count down from 25 to 1. I should also mention that these guys have not seen the actual top 25
yes,
list.
you're getting our live reaction to this right now.
So the number,
quite frankly, we don't care whose feelings get hurt either.
Really
This is what we think.
We're all going to know when someone makes a face who put their top 25. Who's like, oh, why is my guy that rank? Apparently, my opinions are all wrong. It's okay, though. I don't care.
You sound like you care, Suge. But all right, so number 25 all time.
Canelo
Alvarez.
Canelo.
The current, most people would argue, current number one pound for pound in the world.
Yes.
He's kind of moving up, tearing through divisions, collecting titles. I believe he's a 4-division champion at this point. His only loss being to Floyd Money Mayweather. Very early on in his career, he got worked in that fight, though.
He did.
He got worked bad.
He did. It was a masterful ass whooping. That's the best way I can.
Now, and granted, listen. I give a lot of respect to Canelo. He took it. He didn't make any excuses. He learned from it. He got much better.
We gonna call it what it was.
Even though they called it a majority decision, that was
I mean, Oscar always has the at least one judge on deck for his guy.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. He hasn't lost since then. He had a draw with Triple G, but I mean, he's been tearing through guys like Caleb Plant, Billy Joe Saunders. He's getting ready to run through one of the Charlos. It looks like maybe. So
doesn't he have 3
I
draws
wouldn't
on his
say run through.
I believe
he
gonna run through the Charlo.
I don't think he's gonna run through him, but I also do think that is a testament to how great he is that he's being this active at this time in boxing, because you don't see a lot of guys taking 3-4 fights a year, and especially in the prime of their career.
Yeah.
against all top
Yeah.
guys. Like you can argue, hey man, maybe they're not on his level, but they are the top guys out there. They are the
best that
champions.
boxing got to offer right now. So
Yeah.
He's not taking fights with Jake Paul or Logan Paul. That's for sure.
So I kind of
Floyd
disagree.
is retired.
I kind of disagree.
I
with
did
y'all,
say
man.
Floyd. Why did you say that? I didn't say Floyd. I just said
He's the only real fighter who's fought them.
I'm just saying he didn't take those fights. But before Mike goes, I'll just say this. I think I just said before we started the stream, I put Canelo too high on my list. I'm okay with him being at 25. I think he's around for me the 19, 20, 18 area, 17. But I'm fine with him being at 25. I think
I'm at 24.
Okay, yeah, I'm fine with it. I don't disagree. I think it's because he's still active, he should be a little higher, but I understand, and I'm fine with him being right here. Go ahead, Mike. My bad.
No, I mean I kind of disagree with you guys on like who he fights. I mean he's on my list and he made top 20 for me, right? Because he's accomplished a lot, and I do agree that for the most part, I don't take him as a duck. He's not ducking anybody, but I feel like he had a lot of fights that were like waste of time fights. You know what I mean? Like, all right, man, we know, like the Caleb Plant fight was a good fight. I thought that, and Zay, me and you talked. I had Plant winning before he got floored.
Yes.
But I feel like he's fought a lot of, waste of time fights.
Yeah,
let's
guys
get
know what you're
You
about.
said the
to
Billy
these
Joe
Charlie.
fight a waste of time.
No, but who was the guy? I'm trying to look at his. Who was the guy he fought before?
What was it? Liam. I can't remember.
Yeah, but you know what though? Like, it's the business of boxing, unfortunately, and I know a lot of those fights were out of his control, and that's part of the rift that he had with Golden Boy Promotions was that he wanted certain fights and they weren't giving it to him. Like that's what ultimately cost them the split up was he wanted the Caleb Plant fight and they weren't trying to give him that fight, so he sued Golden Boy to get out of it so he can do that fight.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, like especially what we were talking about before, doing this list was hard. Was there's a lot of boxers you don't know about on this list, so you have to go back and look. But when you go back and look, there's records that are crazy, like 169 fights, and you're like, who the hell fights 169 times? Well, the problem is you're going to run into people that fought just anybody at that time. So the records look like you're like, oh my god, 169 fights, that's amazing. But then you got to kind of be like, wait a minute. Who is he fighting? Where were those fights at? Things like that. There's times that fights were real, they were different back in the day. So I agree with Mike. He's not ducking, but there are fights he could have taken that could cemented his legacy a lot better.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, you're going to have to fight who you fight in front of you. And if you beat them all, what more can you ask?
You know what? Talking about Avni Ildrim. Mikey, that was the fight before.
Oh, Ildrim. Yeah.
That's a waste of time fight.
It wasn't right. Like he was like a mandatory challenger.
If this is mandatory, then I can understand that. That's how.
Because like you have to fight him. He could have dropped the belt and moved up. But, you take the fight and just move on. It's whatever.
The Rocky Fielding is that Fielding?
Yeah. If you go through any fighter's record one by one, you're going to see a lot of fights. You're like, why did you take that fight? Because you can't. It's not all top competition every single time out. But he's doing the thing. This is what made like Tito Trinidad my favorite fighter coming up. Is he's going and seeking out fights. He's not doing the Roy Jones thing of, well, I'm in this division and there's nobody here for he did that for a long while, right? Eventually, obviously, Roy moved out of light heavyweight and all that as well. But for Canelo, I didn't have him on my list, but I think 25 is a good spot for him. He's still, you could still say he's in his prime right now, so he's got a lot left. But 25 is, I think, a good spot.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's why I didn't put him on my list either, just because he's still. When it's all said and done, he might be up there. But I always look at notable fights for these fighters. That's kind of one like the big things for me when I was making my list. And like his most notable fight was the one that he lost. But Yeah, I mean, Triple G was a big one, and the fact that you're going through these different weight classes that counts for something too. But I want to see him finish out his career and then look at the whole thing before I put him on the list. But yeah, I had no problem with him being on the list.
All right, so we're gonna move on to number 24, another recent fighter, very recent fighter. Number 24 on the list, Andre Ward.
You know what's funny? You know what's funny? I was going to say, I was like, if he were able to fight Andre Ward before he retired, that would have catapulted him. But yeah, because Andre Ward finished his career undefeated.
He finished 32-0.
I'm so glad young SOG.
I feel so bad. I completely forgot about it, but because of the record.
I ain't even finished my intro of the fighter.
I know, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brodny.
You're gonna get a lot of this through the stream. You're gonna get a lot of this.
He finished his career 32-0, 16 knockouts, 2 division champion, retired as arguably the number 1 pound for pound fighter in the world at the time. A great defensive fighter, a really intelligent fighter in the ring. Had a couple of, several notable wins. He beat Sergey Kovalev a couple times, Carl Froch, Mikhail Kessler, Sullivan Barrera. There was somebody, Chad Dawson's an all right fighter. But the main thing here, again, undefeated. He went through a couple of divisions. He was on top, all throughout his career. I think he was overlooked for a good part of his career, but he got that recognition right towards the very end and had arguably his biggest wins right at the end of his career. And like I said, went out on top.
Yeah.
I get where you're coming from. Go ahead, Deshaun. I'll go ahead.
Real quick. Speaking of Andre Ward, though, because I had him at 17 just because personally, I guess because I'm not trying to call nobody old. I'm just saying, I grew up in an era I didn't get to see a lot of the boxers that you guys had seen, so that's why I had my dad help me with my list. But me personally, watching Andre Ward coming up is just, he was one of my favorite boxers, so I knew I had to put him on the list at some point. But I had him at 17, and I also wanted to bring up, since we just got done talking about Canelo, have y'all heard that rumor about a potential if Andre Ward were to come out of retirement, what would happen in that fight, and do you think that could happen?
I think Ward's been out for too long, but Ward has talked about it. He said
when did he retire again? What year?
It's been about 3 or 4 years now, right?
He quit in 2017.
Yeah.
Oh, that's 5 years.
Yeah. So I don't, but yeah.
But he's still only, I think, 37 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, he retired young.
Yeah,
he's still young. For me, I forgot about him, but 32 wins only. There's so many boxers that have so many more wins and so many more. No. I'm just saying, to me, he's like 26 for me.
Gotcha.
I think the light heavyweight division was weak. I don't know. I mean, the super middleweight, cool. But if he got to fight Canelo and beat Canelo, that would probably put him on the list for me. Canelo beat him.
But you absolutely sure. I'm right there with you. But that's the argument I make for Canelo, right? And Ferris is kind of making that point about Andre Ward. It's light heavyweight division was weak. SOG didn't have enough names to pad his resume. But you could say the exact same thing about Canelo. Who did Canelo beat? Right? His biggest fight was Floyd, but he lost that fight. Right?
Yeah, but he beat an older Mosley. He beat an older Cotto. He's going up and beat.
He beat Triple G. I think Triple G was.
And he's beating the guys who have the belts. So and I think that's why it's important for him to move up to that cruiserweight and try to get that belt as well. That'll really improve his resume quite a bit. Just off the difficulty alone. Yeah. But yeah, Andre, I think it's it's one of those situations where you can watch him and recognize the talent, and he just didn't have. I mean, like I said, he had wins over some good fighters, but just not enough. He didn't have that rival, that really kind of pushes you.
Yeah.
Ward made my top 25, and I did have Canelo ahead of him. but that's only because of activity. I agree with Ferris and what you're saying as well, Zay, that, he wasn't as active. I think at most he fought twice in a year. Canelo out there 3-4 times in a year if they let him. So I did have Ward on the list, but I do, I agree with everything you're saying. But I do think to Deshaun's point, I do think if they fought and then they primes fight, I would give the slight edge to Andre Ward. I think Ward
Absolutely.
would give him enough of a
That would be
problem.
something. That would be something to watch. Yo.
Prime
I think,
versus
I
Prime,
think that
it
would
would be a
be.
great
I
fight.
think that would be a great fight.
It
I
would
mean,
be
obviously,
great.
if he comes back right now, I'm taking Canelo. But yeah, in their primes,
yeah.
I think Ward probably gets the win.
Yeah.
In their primes, but I think it's a great fight.
Yeah. I just want to speak to one thing to Jose's part about what difference between Canelo and Ward is. My only issue is the fight difference. Canelo's fought 60 times, and Andre Ward's only fought 32. That's why I say Canelo is ahead of him, because yes, you could say, well, where's his big wins at? But Canelo's pretty much doubled his fights compared to Ward.
Can I play
That's
devil's
where,
advocate real quick? Just
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
I'm a huge SOG fan, and this is just my simplest argument I can give, is he did not fight as often as these other guys, and that's true. But when he did fight, the product he put on tape was fantastic. You can't lie. If you're really watching him box and watch how he performs, he's one of those dudes that kind of just makes it off of eye test for me, in a similar fashion to Roy Jones, in the sense that maybe he's not. Maybe it's just that you can see it, and it's not something you can explain or put down on a stat line. You know what I'm saying? But intangibles.
Yeah, for sure. I get what you're saying. Obviously, you see that this guy was great, and he is a top fighter. I'm not saying I'm not trying to take that away from him. I would have probably put him 26 had I remembered. But I'm just if we're looking at a list of people, to me, like Jose said, for him, notable wins, people he fought was a big part of it. For me, it's record, legacy, what you brought to the game, what you left in the game, what you things that you did that were big. So for me, it's Andre didn't do as much, but he still does enough to be a great fighter and should be mentioned. But to me, these people that I had on my list, or the list that we're talking about, just did a little bit more. That's all I'm saying. It's no disrespect to him. He's a great fighter. He's an all-time great. And other places looking it up, other lists have him in the top.
That's what I love about this topic, man. Because it's so subjective, and when you're leaving great fighters off the list, you can always make an argument for who you leave off, or who got put on. So. This conversation has been so civil. It's such a nice conversation so far.
I'm sure.
Wait until Rocky Marciano gets brought up.
Making this list though has made me realize that 25 names is a small margin in the grand scheme of how
and
many
all the
great
divisions
fighters
too.
have been.
And all the divisions. We're not just talking heavyweight, middleweight. No, we're talking all the divisions.
I'll even admit, my list, looking at it, is kind of leaning towards the heavyweights, maybe just because that's the more entertaining or more historic division. But bro, there's also a lot of was it lightweight? Is that 145, or what was the Ring Kings weight class with Ray Leonard and Hagler and
they were in that
what was that weight division? Welterweight. Yeah, there's a lot of welterweights on my list. But it's so many other great fighters and so many other divisions, and especially when you look at boxing, how many divisions there are compared to UFC.
147.
Whereas, 147. There's so many great weight classes, bro. And 25 names is not a lot.
No, it's not.
So we're gonna keep it moving here. Going to the number 23. Deshaun brought up the eye test. And that's where it really comes in here. You mentioned him specifically. Roy
Roy
Jones
Jones.
Jr. coming in
Why?
at 23.
Why?
And I will say,
Y'all must have forgot.
I'm not trying to put
Well, no, we
anybody on
didn't
blast
forget
or
him getting
anything like
knocked
that.
out. We didn't forget him getting knocked out.
I'm not trying to blow up anybody's spot or anything. But first off, I'll say he's 66-9. His career record, 4 division champion. He's the only fighter ever to start his career below middleweight and win the heavyweight championship. So I mean, that's pretty impressive. That's pretty impressive, right?
You only put him at 23.
We all know about his, the extraordinary hand speed and the showmanship and all that, and him getting robbed in the Olympics. But there is the other side of it where you kind of wish he had gone after some bigger fights, and fought some of the bigger names at the time. I will say, I had Roy Jones on my list. I had him in 25th. And if it was not for Deshaun putting him in the top 10, he was out.
Yeah. That makes sense. But like Deshaun said, though, it's recency bias for him because he's young. I think between you three on top of me, I honestly don't remember a lot of. I remember watching Tyson a lot, but I don't remember the fights like clear as day. So for Deshaun, I see him remembering that stuff and say, "Oh yeah, I wasn't around when Muhammad Ali fought. I know about it because I watched his fights on YouTube. I watched the videos and things like that. So so like for me, So I think it's recency bias. So yeah, I'm fine with it. Go ahead, Deshaun.
But I was just gonna say, like with me, and that's why I had a lot of help with mine because I knew I didn't want to sound like a 13-year-old watching boxing. So that's why I had like my dad helped me because even though I watched like a lot of these guys like Muhammad Ali, I watched Sugar Ray Robinson's highlight tape all the time. And it's like I watch a lot of the older guys on YouTube so I can develop that perspective, but it still pales in comparison to someone who saw it when it actually happened. You know what I'm saying? Like watching a fight on YouTube is not the same as going over to your homie's house when it's actually happening and experiencing that in a live. So I tried to pay
don't discredit
respect to a lot of.
Don't discredit your age. Like having that youth and looking at this generation, you have a different perspective than what us old heads would have. You know what I'm saying? So
No doubt.
like don't overlook that.
But I definitely tried to pay a lot of homage and be respectful to most of the older generation fighters that I could, but while still putting some guys that ran like the 90s and early 2000s in there as well. Because even in the early 2000s, I wasn't really able to understand what was going on. Like I was like 4 and 5, but like I said, YouTube.
Yeah.
What did you just say?
Freaking young.
Early 2000s, I was like 4 or 5.
And out here teaching people now. So Mike, what do you think about Roy coming in at number 23?
I mean, I'm cool with it. I had him in my top 20. And I do think at one point in time, Roy was known for pound. He was in the top 2 or 3 pound for pound at that time. So
not in this house.
I mean, like I think part of the allure for Roy is like you said, the quickness and all of that, the showmanship.
Yeah.
Right. He did have a strong impact on the game. I realized as I got older that Roy ain't really fighting nobody. Right. You know what I mean? Like, but in his defense, the division was weak at that time. There wasn't many people out there besides him and B Hop and a few others, which, they ended up fighting, but then, the second time ended up happening way
when
too
they were
late.
retired,
Yeah. And that I blame promoters and stuff getting in the middle of that. So I don't have a problem with him on the list. He made my top 20.
No doubt, fair.
Yeah, I have.
Can I also add? Oh, real quick. Can I also add that like my biggest reason for adding Roy was like Mike just said, like what he brought to the game, and the biggest like athlete I could compare Roy Jones to, in my opinion, is kind of like Allen Iverson in the sense that he was out there when in left field, kind of before Floyd was, and kind of paved that way when boxers weren't really known for necessarily rapping or being the guy that's dancing in the middle of the fight and stuff.
Bringing that kind of that style, that swagger that you don't
swag,
really see.
yeah, bro.
No,
Like,
yeah,
which makes sense now with the other guy you asked me to include. But so Jose, you got any thoughts on Roy?
No. Like, I mean, I think I had him at maybe 25th or 24th or something like that. And yeah, he almost didn't make the list, but you beat Bernard Hopkins. I understand Bernard Hopkins was really young, but so was Roy Jones. But I give you credit for that. He beat James Toney. So like he beat some great fighters. It wasn't like he fought all bums or anything like that. And entertaining. He didn't beat Tarver. Well, he beat him the first time. Tarver would contest that he didn't beat him the first time. But
Ferris loves pointing out, bringing that Tarver fight up.
But any great fighter is going to have a loss outside of Mayweather and Rocky Marciano. But we'll discuss Rocky Marciano.
Floyd lost the minute he stepped foot in the ring with Jake Paul, bro. I mean Logan Paul, fam. That was a loss for me.
He's already retired.
That was
already retired.
That was an exhibition fight, man. That wasn't no real fight. They didn't even
it doesn't count as a loss on his record. It's just a loss in general, bro. Like, why are you standing in front of this man with boxing gloves on? Do you know who
because
you
he's
are?
getting paid? Hey,
he's easy money.
Let me tell you something. You're
$100 million check.
Yeah, $100 million. You give me $100 million.
Let me ask you this, Deshaun. Does he get the W back for the fact that he hasn't given?
He hasn't paid him yet, right?
Give me $100,000. I'll get in the ring. Give me $100 million. Sorry, not a.
That's like if they would have played LeBron 1-on-1 in basketball, fam. Like that's insane.
All right. So this next one coming in at number 22. I'm going to read off some of their accomplishments and see if y'all know who I'm talking about here. Because this is another one who didn't make my list at all.
Okay.
But, some of y'all got him in here. Overall record, 62, 8-2. All right. He is the only 8-division champion in history. Now, that's, obviously because, there are a lot more divisions now than there were a long time ago. But the only 8-division champion history still means something, right? The only fighter to hold a title in 4 different decades, and the oldest welterweight champion in history.
I feel like
he didn't make your list.
Sugar Shane or Oscar.
I was gonna say
it has to be no Roberto Duran. No, it's Oscar. I think it's Oscar, right?
It's either Oscar or Sugar Shane, I think.
It is Manny Pacquiao.
Oh, Manny Pacquiao.
Oh. Okay. I know it was an Oscar. Oscar didn't have that many fights.
He was 40 years old when he beat Keith Thurman to win the title.
Oh, that's
to
right.
get the 2020s.
Pacquiao made my list. Yeah, he absolutely.
Pacquiao made my list. I have him at 21.
At mine. I have him at 19.
Disrespectful, Brodny.
Wait, I made a mistake. I made a mistake. Because, I must have been so stressed out in doing my list. On my original list that I was doing it by hand before I sent it to you, he was on there. So I don't know who. That's probably why I was struck. That's probably why, like, one of these other names, I ain't gonna put my name out. These names out here yet.
Oh no, my bad. I did have him on my list.
But he should have.
Oh, Brodny over here trying to throw shade at everybody.
I didn't want him on my list, but I put him on there.
Yeah, he should have been on my list. I don't know.
Yes,
I made a mistake. That's my fault.
Yeah,
but
because
he
I have
on my list.
I have Oscar and Manny 21, 22 or 22, 21. So that's why I was like, wait, who? Yeah, and Ferris is right. The 8 divisions should have been an indicator, but I was never really a Manny Pacquiao fan or cared about his fights that much.
But he won his first title in the 43-pound division. And he's been moving up then.
Yeah.
The cotton weight.
Yo.
Not a Manny fan, I take it.
Look, man, you don't have to like him, but you got respect that man.
You gotta give him his prize. He was on my list. I'm a little disappointed looking at this to see that he didn't make my final, but he should have been here.
But yeah, you got one person to blame for that one. All right. We're gonna move on to
you giving out these stressful tasks, man.
I'm saying, man. You gonna move on to number 21. This guy was 186, 23, 10-1 in his career. So obviously you already know he's an older fighter, right? People don't fight that much these days.
Wait, did you say that record again? 100. You said 4 different records.
186 wins, 23 losses,
Oh, okay.
10 draws, 1 no contest.
10 draws.
Oh, 1 no contest.
Yes.
10 draws?
Yes.
Is that Henry Armstrong?
It isn't. It's not. Suge say he, in particular, he had done a little digging into this guy's past.
Archie Moore. Yeah, this one got me. I have him super high. Yeah. And the reason I have him super high.
I did as well.
The reason I have him super high is talking about him. He did not get a chance at the heavyweight championship. The
light heavyweight.
Till late in his career. Like he was like almost, I think 39. I think that's when he got his first chance. Yeah. And he was already like 168 wins. And
just to further that, once he got the chance, he held the belt for 10 years.
Yeah, he didn't. He fought and didn't lose the belt. But this guy, you want to talk about fighting racism? How do you go 168 fights times and you don't get a chance at the championship belt? That is crazy. And I was reading about Archie Moore, and I think he trained Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, and James Tillis. Yeah. So he definitely deserves to be on this list. I mean, and that's what I was talking about. You go back and you look at these old records, and you're like, who the hell fights for 168? Yeah. And that's not even, what is it? 200.
It's a lot.
220 fights.
Yeah.
131 KOs. He knocked out 131 people. Think about that.
That's insane.
I mean,
wait, who are you talking about?
This man,
Archie
Moore.
I definitely need to do some research because that's where my youth and my father's failing memory comes into play. Because I definitely
throwing the old man under the bus.
Yeah.
No, that wasn't his assignment.
And don't feel bad. I mean, like, I'll be honest to everybody watching or who will see this. My list, I excluded a lot of the older guys because
me too.
If I couldn't go back and if I couldn't look you up and see you fight, like, I didn't want to act that like I knew anything about you. So don't get mad at me because I just left a lot of those guys out with respect, though. You know what I mean? With respect.
There were yes. You could make a case for a lot of these guys from like the 1930s and 20s and stuff like that. I wasn't gonna put too many on this list either, right? Like, because a lot of these guys couldn't hang with some of these guys that we're putting on the list, right? If we're being real about it.
They're leaving them off with disrespect.
Like, but some of the accomplishments that they've had, like, you have to recognize that.
Yeah.
So that's why there are some that I did put on my list, but I wasn't going to fill my list up with a bunch of these guys.
And to Suge's point, like, in going through this and doing research, like, seeing these guys fighting 180 something times, 80 knockouts. It's like, damn. Yeah, and let's not forget, a lot of these guys were fighting 15 rounds.
Yes.
But you also got to take into account that that's when you could basically pull a regular Joe off the street and call him a boxer. These guys weren't like trained athletes. Not to say that knocking out 168 people isn't an impressive feat, because if you go down in Manhattan and knock out 168 civilians, that's insane levels of respect I got for you. So
yes,
I mean.
and I 100% agree with Mike, because going through this list, there were people that I was like, I've never seen them, so I can't sit there and put them on a list if I haven't seen them. But you'll see people. Obviously, I'll just throw a name out there that we probably all put on there. Joe Johnson. None of us seen him. There's not even very, very minimal video of him.
Jack Johnson.
Jack Johnson. Why did I say Joe Johnson? Sorry, Jack Johnson. My apologies. Jack Johnson. But there's very minimal video of him. None of us seen him, but we know the impact that he had on boxing and why I have him on the list. And there's a couple. There's like I think that for me it's like five people that I put on this list. Archie Moore was one of them, because I digged into him. I saw that and I was like, man, could you imagine you're winning that many fights and you don't get a shot at the title? Yeah, like, that is nuts. And so to me, that's why I included him on my list, because that was a big something to overcome. And then, like Brodny said, he didn't lose the belt for 10 years.
Yeah.
So imagine it took forever to get there, and then you win, and then you don't lose it because you're like, if I lose this, I ain't never getting a chance again. So
that's a good point.
That's respect. That's just
for sure.
Respect right there, especially in boxing. So
There's
that's why I had it on my list.
There's some guys in the sport that boxing looks different today if they weren't around. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And that's part of what puts
100%.
them on the list.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about Jack Johnson a little later because he had a major impact on the sport. Obviously, like he said.
My apologies, Jack Johnson, not Joe Johnson.
He was also one of our Black History facts. That's one of our more popular Black History facts that we did on our show.
Not all of it was great, but we'll talk about it.
And obviously, by the amount of fights that he had, he wasn't pulling a Gary Russell. He was looking for the smoke. So.
Oh, shots fired!
Shots. You know, Gary.
I'm gonna
Gary Russell.
A spoiler alert right now. Gary didn't make the list.
He didn't make the list. Gary Russell. I mean, listen. Gary had his title for 6 years, 6.5 years, but he only fought like 3 times. So it's like
he was just holding it.